Yeah.
You have a state case.
I have 3:01, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you have one of these little devices, please turn it to silent.
I got one, but I don't know where the hell it is.
What do you need? I have a extra pen.
No, I got rid of my phone.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll call the roll real quick. We have present our district attorney, Tony Peters, Supervisor Tinkle, Supervisor Banks, Supervisor Feinberg. Supervisor Guy is not going to be here today. Supervisor Flaherty and our district manager, Christian. And do we have anybody that signed up to speak?
Yes, we do. We have Jim Brand, and he has two items we would like to address, SR 82 and controllable weirs, and he also is going to have some comments a little further down the agenda about streetlights.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for your time today. I'm Jim Brand of 10154 Avalon Lake Circle in Hampton Park, Fort Myers. The first thing I want to make sure you all are aware of is that we have a proposal for a mine to mine lime rock. You all have probably seen it. And their website is really interesting. One of the things it asks people to do is send emails to the county commissioners. I'm familiar with doing that, because you get back an email telling you that you're breaking the law and don't do it no more. Because they're going to vote on this on June the 26th at 9 a.m. And there's a hearing, not a hearing, a town hall meeting on June the 12th in Mr. Tinkle's community. And then another one on June the 14th in Lehigh Acres. I think at least one, if not all of you, should go to one of those and hear what the heck. They're talking about 1,000 dump trucks a day down Daniels, turning right on SR 82, going to where the mine is on Homestead. 1,000 a day. What is that? If you're working 12 hours a day, that's like 85 an hour. Dirt, dust, noise. I don't know that Daniels is built for that kind of traffic. 82 might be after they get through reconstructing it. The next thing I want to speak about is adjustable weirs in Hampton Park, Stony Brook, and Pelican Preserve. The rainy season has started in May. The Hampton Park lakes, some of them are very close to full pool. Last year we had 2 100-year events. Adjustable weirs will allow you to lower the lake levels whenever a rain event is predicted. So all of a sudden the lake becomes a reservoir for what? Water. Instead of my street, your streets, and our yards. My, what a concept. It's been 8 months since Irma. Tetra Tech indicates that South Florida Water Management District wants a hydraulic study completed for all of Gateway. The study takes 9 months, costs $200,000. I reviewed it on the South Florida Water Management website. It's a complex study. Looks like it's designed for a brand new community, not one like Gateway. In the meantime, yards and streets will flood if we have a 100 rain event this year, and you know we probably will. As part of the 1986 flood plan, that's part of the plan, that your streets and your yards flood whenever you have a 100-year rain event. So I'm suggesting that Gateway Services be proactive and suggest to South Florida Water Management District that GSCDD, you all perform a test of adjustable weirs using Hampton Park, Stony Brook, and Pelican Preserve as your test environment. Tetra Tech and the board need to convince South Florida Water Management District that a study, a hydraulic study of all of Gateway at the cost of $200,000 or more $200,000 or more of our taxpayer dollars is not needed to achieve an effective solution without harm to the whole system. We don't need to spend $200,000 in a 9-month study. Thank you.
Okay, next, Mike Harley, Championship Circle, looking for help on easements for storm sewer lines.
Thank you. Hello, board. I'm Mike Harley from the Villas Championship Circle, and I am aware that 23 properties in the Villas do not have proper easements for storm drain sewer lines. And I guess I'm looking for help on how we can communicate that to the 23 property owners. I'm aware of it, but we as a HOA don't have anything from the CBD in writing saying that there's a deficiency and that this is a problem that those 23 owners need to cure. So I'm looking for help from the board in the way of written communication to that effect, that we can send out with letters to those 23 property owners.
Margaret, this is one of those that will be, that were impacted by the turnover, the TOEs over to South Florida. The Villas is one of them, one that I strenuously objected to turning over because it's acknowledging that we're taking over stormwater management system for which we do not have permits. We've known about this for 3-4 years at the Villas. I thought, and I have it on my list of things to talk about, let's talk about it now. Part of the agreement that I thought we reached last week, or at the last meeting, was that we were going to go back to those communities that were on the list, send them separate letters, telling them or making them aware of deficiencies in their system that we're not responsible for relative to stormwater management. For example, what's where it went? Not culverts. Along the street. Lost me. No, not catch basins. Valley gutters. Just watch it.
Good job, Tony.
I've seen this all watch it.
I'm moving over here.
Be careful. Don't get too close to us.
But my point is that what I think we could do to help you is the letter that we talked about getting out to all of those communities, which we should be in the process of finalizing, because we've accepted this stuff now. We need to be getting out a letter, and a letter to you would be, hey, over at the Villas, Mike, you guys have 23 homes that need to sign these easements to be able to allow the CDD to facilitate the CDD's operation and maintenance of those pipes. Because we go out there on those right now, and as nice as we might be, or our vendor be, to go out there and clean those sewers, somebody could tell them, better get you know what, off my property. We need that deal. So maybe our letter going to your going to you, and then you send it on out to your 23 residents. And at any time, I would be more than willing to talk to the people and let them know that we really need these easements to be able to allow us, the CDD, to operate and maintain that system.
That'd be a big help, because right now it would just be coming from our HOA. I don't think it has a lot of credence that way.
But we need to be preparing a letter to that extent, and not only yours, but we have Champion Greens, and I don't know how many more we have of those 75 permits that
And
fall in that.
I believe Chris is aware that it's just a matter of doing them one at a time.
Yeah, we
We need to get those letters.
Yeah, we recently got, to a similar situation with Head Links and the Waterford Amenity Center, but I'd be happy to come to your HOA, but what I'm pulling together is the permit and then a copy of your plat that illustrates where those are, so it's easy to see the difference.
We pretty much have that information. We have the addresses of the 23 owners, and Ed actually produced an individual plat for each of the 23 property owners, and we're ready to mail out. But we want those owners to know it's coming from a higher authority, not just the HOA. And
Here's
that-
for tomorrow, we'll work with you.
Okay.
Chris, for you, what we did is, this was 3-4 years ago. Tony and I worked together, this before I was on the board, we worked together to get a form of an easement to dedicate to the CDD. Everything was acceptable. And then Tony came back and indicated that we also needed an affidavit from the mortgagee,
Or
if there was.
Or joinder in consent.
Joinder in consent, to have that signed also. We got all that acknowledged, and both sides were pretty well agreeable, me being one side and Tony being the other. And then we took it to the villas, and then the villas went to their attorney, and the attorney said, we don't need to do anything. And so that's where we said, but I think this letter from, and/or show up of Chris to a meeting might help a lot to get
I
this.
agree,
going.
our attorney pretty much said this should be between the CBD and those property owners, and we're just trying to facilitate. And this will prove that, that this is, like I said, coming from a higher authority. And I appreciate your offer to
Chris
address.
Shields.
Still their attorney?
Yeah, I think Chris still, you're
Chris-
still
Chris
attorney.
Shields, yeah.
You
And I
kinda know-
appreciate your offer to speak to those owners, but half of them are up north now, so might be a few months before we ask you to do that if it's even
But
necessary.
I think that letter would go a
I
long
think that'll
way
help.
to indicate what the
Okay.
issue is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that same letter would be, Chris, that same philosophy of letter would be at Hampton Park on the, what's the word line?
Bellcrest.
Bellcrest and, well, not only Bellcrest, but all of the areas that had the ADS pipe, going to the field tile pipe.
There might be an easier solution after, but I'm not finished. I'll talk about that in my report.
We have another speaker.
Yes, last one, Bob Geppert. Arena flowway, drainage boxes in Prado around the gateway catch basin.
Bob Geppert, Pelican Preserve. Good
And
afternoon.
Bob, give me 1 second.
Sure.
If you want to address the board, you need to fill out one of those
I did.
forms in the back, not you,
Oh.
this other gentleman raised his hand, sorry, Bob.
Fill it out, Mom.
The other you.
Okay.
Hoping Bob understands the rules by
Well,
now.
I only have one O in my Bible.
Bob's got exempt status.
The first thing I want to discuss with you is the Carina issue relative to 26 homes from Cypress Grove Boulevard to the Weir that join the flowway. As built incorrectly by our favorite builder, Lennar, there's not enough, they didn't build the lots deep enough or wide enough, long enough, whatever you want to call it, to allow easement. And you cannot service the responsibilities of the flowway unless these things are lengthened or unless the individual homeowners give their approval to allow that access. We were working on getting a resolution until such time as we had the gun to our heads as a district and we had to take all the transfers. So this is still an open item. And basically, we've been told by Lennar, it's a done deal, we're out of it, it's transferred to you. It hasn't been the 21 days, and what I'm soliciting the board for, I guess, is the approval to move forward legally, whatever we have to do, to notify them that they need to fix this defect and build them as it was designed. In some lots, it's as much as 5 foot.
Bob, I went on to LEAP after you and I talked this afternoon about that, and that thing's not accurate, so it really makes it difficult. But if I go out and take a plat of Carina, and it says it's 140 feet, which is inclusive from the center line of the street, let's say, and I go out 140 feet from the center line of the street, back the lot line, what you're saying is that the end of that 140 feet,
Is in the
and
canal.
back 20 feet is
In the canal.
is the easement, but it's in actuality in the canal.
Underwood, that is correct. A survey was done, all the parties came to it, Tetra Tech was there, I was there, RWA, Rhonda Brewer, who's no longer with them, but representatives of, and basically,
So RWA submitted a set of as-bills that were incorrect or correctly showed a problem.
I can't answer that. All I know is, like you said, what's supposed to be the end of the lot is underwater.
Perhaps Danny may know that question.
These are the 26 that face basically the flowway, starting
Correct.
at the road going back to Casella, all the way down to Weir.
Exactly, exactly.
I'm on his list now.
You heard that question because it's loaded.
No, go ahead.
Did the engineer RWA submit a set of as-bills that were incorrect or correctly showed an incorrect construction?
I think they showed it I think they correctly showed it incorrectly.
Okay.
No, they know that it's wrong.
So they know it's wrong?
Yes.
If you understood that.
That's why he gets paid the big bucks.
I guess South Florida doesn't care.
Well, I mean, no, they care about the drainage, they care about control elevation, they care about storage. They don't care about our ability to
Maintenance.
access a maintenance easement. That is not their,
Evaluate.
well, it's just not, they're not a party to it.
Yeah, aren't they required, doesn't South Florida require the 20-foot LME as part of the permit condition?
I'd have to look at that and
I
see.
thought
It
there was
may-
required 20 feet that came from South Florida.
Yeah, it
That would
may-
tone him down, man, if it did.
Well, it is there.
It's just in the water.
No, but functional.
I don't, does it say functional in there?
Maybe we could get a submarine service.
Well, but the point is, right now, it's somewhat water over the dam. Now what we're trying to do is to figure out how to fix it.
That is correct. It should be built to design.
Madam Chairman, do you want to have this discussion now or under, with my part?
I didn't see, I got the papers from you, but I didn't see it on the agenda. That's why I was bringing it up.
Yeah, if you want, I can address it.
Go ahead and address it.
Yeah, because my understanding is a time-sensitive window.
Well, it may or may not be.
Okay.
My understanding is that while the transfer of operating entity form for Carina Phase 2 permit and application has been submitted to South Florida Water Management District, they have not yet accepted that form formally. They have not yet issued the formal acceptance, which comes in the form of a notice with a 21-day right to challenge that or file an administrative appeal. That's why I would suggest that at the present time, immediately, hopefully even tomorrow, that a letter be sent to South Florida Water Management District, unless Danny or Chris disagree, saying, we submitted this because you guys, we submitted this application. At the time we did, we had previously told you that there were issues with this particular application and permit, that we don't even own it yet, that there are deficiencies with it.
This is that 2013 submittal?
No, recently.
Oh, recently.
No, let me back up a bit. In April, when the district submitted a number of applications, like 17 applications, not in a permit form, but an application form to show good faith, and we asked for an extension. One of the ones, if I recall correctly, that was listed as not being submitted was for Carina Phase 2. We said, please give us additional time. And some of the reasons, if I recall correctly, was we don't yet even own those because they've not yet been conveyed to us because we've not accepted them for a number of deficiencies, and there are a number of deficiencies. But because of the time frame and the need to submit the transfer operating entity forms for all the 17 permits, and all 72 applications under the 17 permits, Carina Phase 2 was submitted. To my knowledge, I think as of today, Chris, we've not yet received any indication, and on the e-permitting portal, there's no indication yet that South Florida has quote-unquote accepted that transfer. And started the 21-day clock for an administrative proceeding. So what I would suggest is that before they do accept that transfer, that a letter be sent to South Florida Water Management District, say, listen, we submitted this TOE form on such and such a date. As you recall from our prior letter of April, we told you we don't own it yet and we are major issues. We want to, again, show you these major issues. We want you to initiate a proceeding with Tel Lennar to fix that because they were the permittee prior to the date of transfer. And these deficiencies existed prior to the date of transfer. And Danny, correct me if I'm wrong, under the rules, the permittee prior to the date of transfer is responsible for the permit compliance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Up until the date of transfer. And the operating entity after the date of transfer is responsible for permit compliance. So I think that's what we need to do no later than tomorrow, quite frankly.
Let's do that letter, but I want to pin down who's going to do it. Is it
Yeah,
going to
and
be
then
you,
part
is
of
it
that.
going to be Danny?
I think it needs to be
Chris?
Chris, Danny and I are working on that, and I think you need to give us specific authorization for that, especially an engineer, without having a formal task authorization written because of the time-sensitive nature. Maybe have Danny come back next week with, or just treat it under the normal course of their engineering services contract.
Do this a follow-up.
Yeah, because I'd like to try to get that letter in before we get the letter from them
Absolutely.
saying we've accepted the
Absolutely.
transfer.
Well, the other part of that is do we not have a bond with Lennar for this work? And why concurrent, I agree with the letter.
Make it
but
demand on
concurrent-
surety.
Concurrent with it, contact the surety.
If we have an outstanding bond for those improvements, yeah.
that would get their
I think,
attention.
in that, like in South Florida involved, in South Florida, going after the WC, I don't know.
No, they're just gonna pull apart.
That would be
the spot.
ideal,
That's all
but
they're
we
gonna
don't
do.
really have a great relationship.
Do we need a motion to authorize?
Yes.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Well, I just wanna make sure we haven't received, because we've received a number of letters from the water management district.
that one we haven't yet, I don't believe, Chris, right?
Okay, that's why I haven't gone through them all.
Yeah, and I went on the website today, Danny, when I got,
Okay.
you saw the
Just wanna make sure.
correspondence today?
Yeah.
Yes.
I went there, the permanent portal as of this morning.
Well, I've seen, okay, I
And they're a
just
day
seen
or
some
two
more.
behind usually, and I did not see them
Okay.
issuing anything yet on the screen.
Okay, that's what I was just.
Well, I'm with you, that's why it's time sensitive.
I'd make the motion then that the district engineer and attorney, working with district manager Chris, get that letter put together, and then at the next meeting, we'll follow it up with the task authorization that covers the cost and expenses of creating that letter.
Yeah, and I think if possible, if we, in that letter would also maybe even say that, ask them to not finalize the transfer of that operating permit until such time as Lennar fixes it. We're like, who's asking that? Danny, have you had that experience before?
No, but.
You might
we'll
be
give it a
putting
try.
together the legalese.
Okay, okay.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Do we have to ask the public if it's not on the agenda?
Yes. Do you have any comment on that?
Any comments from the public? I see none.
Thank you.
Okay, I will call the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Got-
Okay, the much discussed, the second item has the much discussed radio downspouts, radio destroys. I've been told this week verbally, haven't checked it yet, but I've asked Tetra Tech to go out and do a field check. But apparently Lennar started putting in the requested drainage between homes. And, but between Rhonda quitting and Cindy Rush going away, and they haven't built it yet, but supposedly there's some, 20 or 30 homes. So we should be getting.
Congratulations.
Well, it shows the guilty. So I do have some comments, possible comments on the Gateway catch station, but I'll wait till that comes up on the agenda. Thank you.
Our last speaker, R.J. Owner. Mahogany Run, we wanted to talk about the sewers.
Yes, it sounds like it's a squeaky wheel is going to get the action done. We probably are one of the older areas in the Gateway community. And our sewers last year under Irma and the week before were really flooded, our streets. And I don't know if our sewer still has been cleaned out. And you go further down south, like Thatcher, et cetera, they also had the same problem. I had a son-in-law that was superintendent for a village up in Wisconsin, and they cleaned out their sewers routinely every 3 years, and they got federal money to assist if they showed that they cleaned them out. And I don't know if we've been cleaned out in 25, 26 years. It also affects our shoreline. We were told that 109 was supposed to be done this year, and it wasn't. We've lost about 4 feet of frontage, or backyard, I should say, to the water because of the waves coming from the west. They're in the summer, and it just washes away. Tom Thatcher down the street from us has probably got a 2-3 foot drop. So I'd like the CDD to do something about that as well. Thank you.
Margaret, on that one. To answer, Dick lives in Davy Green South. That's the one we're gonna take out today for sewer cleaning contract. But the issue of the lake bank preparation is, like you said, one of those that's on hold.
Anybody else, please?
No, that is it.
All right, we'll move on to district engineer. You're up.
Okay, good afternoon. Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech, district engineer. We have I think 3 or 4 items on here today. The last meeting, board asked us to come back with 2 proposals. The first, I think it's under 3A, I. is utility capital improvement analysis. So the discussion at the last meeting were we through the hydraulic modeling addressing certain issues such as where supply water may come from for irrigation, or during the rainy season, where may irrigation water go, and on the wastewater side during the the rainy season, separate from what the gentleman was just talking about on the surface water management piping, but we had some issues with not being able to move wastewater and Kenny having to go from lift station to lift station. So one thought is potentially installing a redundant pipe, which is not part of that scope for the hydraulic modeling. We will identify issues with the hydraulic modeling, but while we're going through that process, so it was asked for us to come back with a scope to develop a CIP component. So that's essentially what this scope is for.
Questions for Danny on this?
Yeah, the only thing I've got is that he did what we asked, but I'm thinking about an addendum relative to the adjustable weirs in Hampton Park. Today was out at Stony Brook and verified that Stony Brook's elevations, based upon the survey done by our guy, they're off a little bit, maybe a couple of hundreds, maybe as much as 800s, but they're close. But the issue is that weir, that orifice that you and I have looked at numerous times, it's not 6 feet wide, it's only 5 feet 2 inches wide, which only makes it worse, and 6 inches high. My thing is that Stony Brook and Hampton Park are very similar. They're both on the same downstream flowway, which is the weir number 3 in Pelican Preserve. They're both at an elevation of 21 that they discharge to. One's at 21 control elevation, i.e. Hampton Park, and the other one's at 22.5, I believe, Stony Brook. If those two aren't eligible for consideration of an adjustable weir, I don't know what is. We could take and notch that thing out, figure out what the design flow was, and I think RWA or who, no, wasn't RWA, who's the engineer? Banks estimated 18 CFS or something like that. We could figure out what that maximum rate is, and then do an adjustable weir. Maybe instead of it being 5 feet 2 inches wide, we narrow it down. But anyway, a notch with an adjustable weir starting at the control elevation, and get that water out. Because right now, what we have is an orifice, and what water goes through that orifice is all the water that's going to go through that orifice. And if a turtle happens to get in the way, he takes up area. We need a safety factor, and I had a gentleman who was out there, one of the property owners, and he was begging, do something to allow us to dump the water out of Stony Brook in advance of a storm. We can't sit there and wait till it gets to the top of that top weir, which is at 25.
I'm gonna stop you.
It kills it. So anyway, I think I need an
Because
addendum.
this task authorization is for.
Hampton Park.
No, this one is just the
No.
utilities.
Oh, you're doing the, I'm sorry.
You got ahead
I got
of
ahead of
yourself.
myself, sorry. I'm all for the utility deal also.
I still like hearing it though.
Yeah.
Any questions for Danny on this modeling? Go ahead.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the task for the utility capital improvement analysis.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. With no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and
Okay,
next
so
is-
the second one is associated with what Ed was talking about.
Rewind.
We'll remember what you said, Ed, you don't have to.
So,
Ditto.
to expand on that and to expand on what Mr. Brandt said, we've had numerous conversations with the Water Management District in the past. And in fact, I talked to the Water Management District while I prepared this scope. So this scope was based, and you probably even read that in there, that my scope is based on this conversation. So, that being said, we have no guarantee that you will even get a permit to do this work.
Right.
Well, the water management is in the belief that you should do that $200,000 study. And I don't know that it's $200,000. It's gonna be a large number because you gotta go and actually set up monitoring stations and understand what your water is doing during storm events, collect rain data. So you're usually setting up multiple automated recording devices that are permanently mounted, and they would then send data during normal rain events, during normal dry events. And then during an actual storm event, they would collect data and they would tell how your storm is acting during a storm. Then you would go and create an actual model of your entire system, and then that model, based on that data, that's how you would calibrate it, just like the hydraulic model we've done on the closed system for the utilities. That model would mimic a similar way. They want to see that model so then they can know how your weirs are functioning, how your legs are functioning, and then appropriately see where the best place to put adjustable weirs are at. So, that being said, Hampton Park and I think Stony Brook are in a unique situation, and we would certainly argue to get a permit, and to me it should be a no-brainer to get a permit, because the way Hampton Park was designed originally, it was designed to go to your next lower weir, which had a 1 foot lower elevation. You actually come out at a 1 foot higher elevation, which means logically you should be able to drop the entire system 1 additional foot and have no impact on the system. So that's to me why it says it should be a no-brainer, because that's how the original design was. It just wasn't permitted that way. So they're gonna rely on the fact that it wasn't permitted that way. It was permitted to go into the system where it's at, which is controlled by elevation 21. So that's where we're at. So if you approve this, the design should be fairly straightforward. We can certainly do that. We can certainly go through the permitting process, but no guarantee that they'll issue a permit, and they may require some level of modeling, which is part of that discussion and why I had a $10,000 item in there, a contingency item, just to do modeling. Now, that's not the system-wide modeling I was talking about. That's just isolated modeling to show that you're not having any downstream impacts on neighboring communities or within that flowway. So that's what this is for, and I understand what Ed's saying is that you could certainly put a Stony Brook in that mix. I just have no guarantee that you're going to get a permit.
If we're successful, I'd like to do a piggyback. And just run Stony Brook right through, right behind it if we're successful.
So, and was it your recommendation that we include scope for Stony Brook together with the Hampton Park and let Danny run both of those in parallel? Or have Stony Brook as a fast follower depending on the success of?
Have Stony Brook as I didn't want to leave Stony Brook out, is my point. Stony Brook has got the same issues as Hampton Park. The one difference is Stony Brook doesn't have that 1 foot fat in it that Hampton Park has, but still,
And that's
Stony
the
Brook has a
logical way.
much more, Hampton
That's
Park.
what you would recommend,
Yeah.
going that way?
Hampton Park's weir is open all the way to the top, so they can get water out. It just keeps getting higher and higher, but it gets out. Yours goes 3 feet before it touches another weir, which is, to me, I don't know how that was ever designed like that. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. But, so I'm doing it as a trailer.
Okay.
And I make that recommendation to proceed with that task authorization.
I have a couple questions on this one.
Do you want to have a second for discussion, or?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, I'll make the second for discussion.
Okay. And my concern with this is, and I'm not saying that none of this needs to be done, is we've got no guarantee from South Florida Water Management that they're gonna do anything on this. You stated in here that the design of the Hampton Park weir, the structure itself, probably isn't going to handle, the entire weir would have to be redone for it to be made adjustable.
If I said that, it's supposed to mean that no, that it should be a fairly easy, it should be a fairly
It
easy.
says,
What I
it
said,
says,
yeah, sir, you have
during, it says that during our surveying or design, it is determined the existing structure cannot sufficiently support the proposed gating structurally.
Oh, we can
Then
do something.
additional services currently not included would be required to design a replacement structure.
Right,
Part
so
of what
if
happened
during
was,
that-
when he was doing this, he was basing it on, this is what happens when you believe in as-bills. He wrote this based on the as-bill. I just let him know yesterday, it wasn't built in accordance with the as-bill.
Okay.
There was a notch. If you look at the Florida Water Management permit, it shows the weir opening, and then a concrete wall, and then a notch. It wasn't built that way. It's a solid opening, so he doesn't have that issue.
And-
Let me hear from.
No, that's accurate. So we're anticipating that this will be fairly straightforward, that we don't have to do any significant structural design, we don't have to replace structures. We can go through our design, it'll be at a level that'll get a permit and be able to bid it out, with that existing structure that's there.
Okay. Part of my other concern with this is, rather than, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we're gonna do this piecemeal. We're gonna look at this part of the system and that part of the system, and we're gonna try and fix those parts of the system. And we're not looking at that system in its entirety, which is what the hydraulic modeling would be doing. I think part of the problem we've got today is the fact that this entire system was built piecemeal.
Yes.
And we don't really know how, if it's functioning the way that it should have been, it should have been functioning all along, because different developers have built different parts of it, and we don't have a good model of how it's working together. Was it done right, and is it working correctly? And that's my concern with jumping the gun and doing this and not looking at the entire system.
And me personally, if you approve this, one of the things I would recommend before we did anything major, because this is a pretty high dollar amount to go through this for a no, it would be to sit down with the Water Management District and get an official, where do you think we're gonna be at, and then we can report back to the board. And because if it looks like it's gonna be a flat out no without going through that level of effort, that would be what I'd say I would do first. The second thing I would say too is, and we could certainly arrange for you to meet your neighbor, probably your closest special district is Lehigh, which they were East County Water Control District, and now they've changed to a municipal services improvement district called Lehigh Acres Municipal Service Improvement District. And they maintain all of the stormwater throughout Lehigh. And they've got, I don't know, 400 miles or something of canals. They've been working for the last probably 10, 15 years of setting up monitoring stations, exactly what I'm talking about, going through and developing that model. And so they could show you exactly what, they've done. Again, I'm not saying that's what you guys need to do. It would certainly help, because you hit the ball on the head. That's the nail on the head. That's exactly right. This system started in the 80s, and you've had, one major developer, but multiple other developers on top of that, and then multiple engineering firms, and all they've done is they've piecemealed each individual component. So I have no way, it happened after the storm event in 2011 when Pelican nearly flooded, and we realized a lot of the storm infrastructure had never even been completed, and the question was asked to us, what do you think our problem is? And I said, well, I can tell you the obvious from what we see, but the best way of really telling you is to develop a model like that. So we've been saying it for several years. It's just a big pill to swallow if you want to go that direction.
Yes. Mrs. Blair, do you
No, go
have
ahead.
any questions? No, go ahead.
I was wondering, you said Stony Brook could be added to this, like secondary. Okay, how about that structure is totally different from the Hampton Park, so that would have to be rebuilt, wouldn't it?
That one is, the structure is there. It's got the
small
slot.
thing, yeah.
So it could be cut out, you could add a second slot in it. Actually, what I might envision for that is that slot might be made to what it was supposed to have been at, and then you would actually not necessarily make that slot bigger. You could either make that slot bigger, you could go down lower and put a separate slot in completely to allow that level to drain down. So I think that's a 6-inch by 5 foot wide, and that I think is supposed to be 6 foot wide. You could go down 1 foot and come up 6 inches, so you could still keep them separate, and then put a gate in that under normal operation, that gate would cover the bottom slot. If you have a storm coming, it would allow you to lower it, and would then get you down that additional foot. So that's how I would envision, which would work similar to how I envision Hampton working. It'd just be a different structure. But most of the structures throughout Gateway are different, so that's not uncommon.
And how about like a screen to put in front of it, because when you open it, there'd still be a chance something can get stuck.
Yeah, screen
A baffle.
probably isn't a baffle would be that you gotta be careful of safety also, because I think we've seen that during the last storm is if somebody were to go out there and try to, I think Margaret went out there multiple times herself, and if somebody were to fall in there, that's a pretty dangerous thing. So I don't know that a screen is the best thing because it would clog, but baffles are typically what they would put, and they put a device in front of it, it would go out a foot or so and block any large
you have any questions, Mr. Banks?
Nope, good.
So this is the 38,000 with a possible 48,000 just for Hampton Park? Or
well,
are you or are you not including Stony Brook in that 48,000?
No, it's 43, I believe, and that just includes the contingency for the
Right.
modeling, but it does not include anything with Stony Brook.
Mr. Gephardt had his hand up first.
Yeah, speaking on behalf of Pelican, any weirs that are lowered in Greater Gateway, that water's gonna go one place, that's to us. We have a lot of concerns about that also, and I could suggest we piggyback and be the third part of this, but it seems to me, we're putting pennies into a project that requires dollars. I agree with you, what you said, Margaret, let's just bite the bullet, do the master study for the entire community, and then we'll know what we're really dealing with.
Well, my only point with that, and I absolutely agree that we need to address the much larger issue. The reason why I'm in favor of doing this first is at least we're identifying some failure points and trying to address them now. Because I think I just heard something that we're anticipating, another season that could be severe. Not that we may have everything done by then, but I think we need to be planning for a much larger study. We need to kind of work that into our prioritization and funding. But I agree with you. I think we will definitely consider that in our planning process. But my point is, I think we should at least move forward this so we can address and identify and fix any existing failure points that we have today.
Will this in any way supplement or decrease what's going to happen in the future master plan? Or is this throwaway money?
No, it should not have any impact on the downstream design.
No, I mean the
It
master,
will
the
flow,
master,
but not the design.
the master.
The master.
The master design, the whole flow thing that
No.
Jim was talking about.
No, if this is approved, whether you did the master or not, this is low-hanging fruit, essentially.
Very low.
Is it part of the 200,000? Will we have to do it twice?
Well, the 200,000 gets you a model that tells you what your deficiencies are, and gives you something that the water management would now support on making improvements. Because I think, I would also see that your main flowway, it was designed to have adjustable weirs. I mean, there's language in the original permits that talk about adjustable weirs. The water management district's not gonna allow you to put those in. You do that study, and then it'll allow you to do that. So no, anything you do as physical improvements will be on top of that study. But this won't be dollars that are wasted. But I would see, I mean, you could, if you end up making improvements that could help this community out as a whole during storm events, I mean, you could be spending $1 million potentially, at the end of the day. But that would be, I would assume, over quite a bit of time.
Well, from last year to now, the fact that we haven't initiated the master study yet is just unacceptable to me.
Mr. Brand, go ahead.
So thank you, Madam Chairman. So I would like to add that, as Bob just said, 8 months have gone by. Here we are. The money won't be available for the $200,000 or more study until probably January when you get your budget approved. So then we start the study in February or March. So then we're into another rainy season, and there our quality of life continues to be poor during the rainy season. And ladies and gentlemen of the board, please, you've got to look at that picture of, and Stony Brook was underwater more than Hampton Park was during these 2 storm events last year. It was unmitigated disaster, unacceptable for our communities. Thank you.
Let me bring up something that really backs up what you're saying, and I just found out about this today. I talked to Danny, but I haven't talked to anybody else about it. Showed it to Tony. I've got a letter dated February 5th, 1996, from Johnson Engineering, Andy Tilton, to the CDD, to Ms. Rhonda Archer, whoever she was, talking about, and the district apparently had asked for an update on the stormwater management system. There was a shocker on this, very well written, but there was a bullet point that blows me away and addresses the issue you're talking about. This is Andy Tilton. As new areas develop, the construction, and he just talked about the fact that our flowway has 5 weirs and how the water goes from A to B to C to D, the whole deal. Everything was very well written. As new areas develop, the construction of additional lakes and interconnecting culverts will continue. There are, however, 2 major water control structures that will need to be upgraded in the future. These have been constructed as temporary facilities. First time I've ever heard our weirs, 2 of them, and he does not identify in this letter what the 2 are. I can tell you right now, I would put my river bottom farm on it, that it's not one at 6 Mile Cypress, and it sure aren't the 2 monstrosities in Gateway Greens. You don't build them like that as a temporary. I think it's the one that we have argued, that Bob and I have talked about since day one. It's weirs 2 and 3 in Pelican Preserve. Right now, we have data that shows that 3 was built to the right elevation. We've got that. So that's, the vertical control appears to be done right. But the South Florida permit says it's 20 feet wide. In actuality, it's 15 feet wide.
Yeah, it's not wide enough.
It's not wide enough. The second thing is we're waiting on the surveyor to go back out and do weir 2 to get the elevation, because I've got some doubts as to where that one was constructed right. But this does one thing in my mind. First of all, Chris hit the nail on the head, Danny said the same thing. Why we built this system of this size with no control devices, i.e. head recorders and rain gauges, and we're here 26 years later, and the data we have to analyze this is squat. We have nothing. So we would have had 25, 26 years of data if we had head recorders, to where we know what our system does when we get a 1/10 inch rain, or a 1/2 inch rain, or a 3 inch rain, or a 9 inch rain, whatever. We don't have that. That's what the modeling will do, and that's part of the reason the modeling is gonna cost the daggone much. But what I'd like to have Danny do is, and I totally agree with you, Bob and Margaret, I'm all for it, getting Tetra Tech to come back and first talk to South Florida. Let's find out what we're talking about, make sure the extent of this. I think $200,000 is absurd on a price. I think that can be whittled down. But the issue is it will be expensive. Now, I'd like somebody to contact Andy Tilton, me and Tetra Tech, or me and Johnson Engineering aren't on real good terms, so I don't wanna call him. But the issue is, what was he talking about? And why is that just coming up now, 22 years later? That we've been sitting here operating since 1996 with